What's going on, everybody? Back again with another video as the saga continues. This is just another video in a long series of videos that I've been doing about this crazy situation that's been going on with the September 2024 commander bannings and all of the fallout and drama that's been ensuing since then between the community, Wizards of the Coast, the creator of Magic the Gathering, the Rules Committee for Commander, which is the most popular format in Magic the Gathering, the Commander Advisory Group, who was left in the dark. There's so much going on. And if you haven't gotten an opportunity to watch some of my other videos on this particular topic, I highly recommend you go and watch all those videos so you can get up to speed. Now, I wanted to bring something to light because I don't feel like people have been talking about it. And if you've already taken a moment to read what this definition is in front of me, this is something that people do, corporations do, high-level governmental organizations do. It's a pretty common tactic, okay? And basically what it is when you are under hot water, when things are going wrong for you, and you want to shift the public opinion, or you want to shift people's attention away from something that you did wrong, you plant what's called a false flag. And so right here in the definition, it says a false flag operation is an act committed with the intent of disguising the actual source of responsibility and pinning blame on another party. The term false flag originated in the 16th century as an expression meaning an intentional misrepresentation of someone's allegiance. Okay, so this is something that people have been doing for a very, very long time. And honestly, I would not put it past Wizards of the Coast to do this. I just simply wouldn't. It's a really effective strategy. It's part of the reason why I think the entire community is so divided on everything that's going on. And I think that there are a certain number of people that are more susceptible to false flags than other people. And it's a great way of dividing the community and conquering the community and getting a community of people to do exactly what you want. So you might be asking me right now, well, what's the false flag? Well, there's a couple of things that could have been the false flag in this whole scenario. The false flag could have started with the bannings themselves. It could have been the flag where the RC, who was already going to be absorbed by WoTC in the near future, they said to themselves, what's the most ridiculous thing that we could do that would garner the most attention, shift the public opinion in WoTC's favor if the event came that they decided that they wanted to absorb the RC? You see, because I think a lot of people would agree with me when I say simply this. If WoTC would have just outright said, we are taking over the commander format, people would have rioted. We would have been upset. We would have said, hey, you can't take what's not yours. And so they may have strategized this whole thing, which kind of makes sense. They may have strategized this whole thing to engineer public opinion. You know, and some of you might be listening to what I'm saying and going, that's too much. That's too much. You know what? I've been following you on all your videos. I've been watching everything you've been saying. It's been making sense, but this is too far. But is it? Is it too far? Are they not smart enough to have thought about this? Are they not forward thinking enough? Do they not routinely plan entire sets and releases years in advance? I mean, come on, guys. It is perfectly reasonable to think that this could have been a thing. Because if so, then they did a good job. Because, for one, most people at this point support Wizards of the Coast taking control of the RC. because that's effectively what they've done. They've taken control of the RC. But what makes it feel more like a false flag more than anything else is also the fact that they planted another false flag. Because the thing about false flags is if you just use one, you're not going to really get away with it. People are going to see it. But if you use multiple, well, now you're getting somewhere. The more false flags you use, the more effective your strategy becomes. And this is where I was really thinking about this critically, and I want you guys to think about it critically too. If somebody is sending death threats, they're sending threats of violence, those people should be outed. They should be outed. There should be some kind of receipt. Whether it was done in a private message, whether it was done via an email, whether it was done in a letter, a handwritten letter, there should be some evidence that this occurred. And you don't have to provide that evidence at the same time doxing those people, because I actually posted about this particular viewpoint that it just kind of dawned on me. I was like, has anyone actually seen any proof that there were death threats sent? And the thing is, that makes the perfect false flag, right? Because it's perfectly reasonable to assume that somebody would send a death threat. I mean, why wouldn't you? If you're a Magic player and, maybe you're a little bit mafioso, if you will, and you're used to doing that kind of thing or joking about that kind of thing, maybe you're a little bit unhinged and something really bad happens and you're just like, oh, I'm so angry. Maybe you just spent your tax return money on buying a full play set of mana crypts for a bunch of your decks, and then this ban happens and it really makes you angry because you just lost 50% of your value. Or maybe you're a business owner and based on one of my previous videos, somebody got you with a little bit of insider trading. Maybe somebody that had access to this information and shouldn't have had access to this information walked up to you with about, 8 mana crypts and was like, here you go. And maybe they had 8 mana crypts, 6 Jewel Lotus, and just told you, hey, I'm selling out a commander and these are the most expensive pieces and I know that they're easy to sell and they'll be a good investment for you. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and give these to you, big guy. And you're like, all right, cool. And you buy a bunch of those. And before you even get to list them up on TCG Player, they drop 90% of their value. And you get angry. And you're like, oh, who was responsible for this? The RC, the CAG, the whoever else, WoTC. I'm going to send them emails and I'm going to tell them if I ever see them in the streets, I'm going to punch them in the face, whatever. These kind of threats. It doesn't even have to be a death threat. Maybe just a threat of violence. Just a basic threat. I haven't seen anybody post any receipts, any screenshots. There's been a lot of F you, F that. You guys are POSs. I've seen a lot of that kind of stuff. You idiots, you R words, you whatever. A lot of insults slung. But I haven't really seen any threats. And that to me tells me that would be another false flag. Another thing put in place to garner support in the opposite direction. And how do you tell that it's a false flag? Well, for one, there will be a lot of planned response using that false flag as the main talking point, not using anything else. And I've been seeing a lot of that. We're doing this because of these threats. We're doing this because of these threats. Oh, these threats. You will also see a lot of reasonable people, when made aware of these false flags, jumping ship. We'll see that. We see people jumping ship. We've been seeing a lot of people leaving the CAG. We've seen at least two notable people leaving the CAG. You'll see people jumping ship because they understand that this isn't real. But they're not going to say anything because, they've been sworn to secrecy. This is what happens with false flag operations. You also see a lot of notable people who are often paid for their opinions or paid to produce opinions, harping and focusing on this. You'll also see a lot of smaller people start to adopt this verbiage because they're led to believe that this is the most important thing. And it'll slowly become part of the main conversation until the actual goal is achieved. So what is the actual goal? The actual goal is for Wizards of the Coast to take over the Commander format. And once they take over the Commander format, then they have full control of it. And we all see it as a positive thing. Well, not everybody. But a lot of people see it as a positive thing. And I'll be honest with you, I even saw it as a positive thing. But, I'm somebody who prides myself on the ability to critically think here and to not just take everything at its first glance, because that's not how you uncover truth. So I'm inclined to think that this was all planned. Now, here's the thing. At the same time, I'm also hyper aware that I could just be wearing a tinfoil hat right now. I could just be spreading conspiracy theories. Who knows? But I'm also the same type of person that's willing to admit when I'm wrong. Admit when I dropped the bag, when I dropped the ball, when I made a misplay, when I made a mistake. So that's why currently I'm asking, and I'm doing it on this YouTube video because I've gotten quite a few views on this. Can someone in the comment section provide evidence? Can someone show where there was actual, threats of violence to the level that would make the RC quit? Because it's effectively what they did. They just quit. And, and I know, I'm going to show you guys, when I posted about this on my group, posted this, I said, I know I mentioned this in one of my YouTube videos on the topic, but I'm wondering if I can get some clarification from the community, because I actually mentioned this in one of the previous videos, just very briefly, but I did mention this. And I'm wondering if I can get some clarification from the community. I'm 100% against sending people death threats, but I'm also for providing receipts for such allegations. Because remember, this is an allegation that they've made against the community. Okay? This is an allegation that they've made against us. This is a false flag that they potentially could have placed. And so I asked, has anyone seen evidence that these death threats actually happened? It is really, really hard to just take WoTC and the RC at their word when they spent an entire year telling us to buy product, chasing the cards that they had already planned on banning. Show me one timestamp message, one death threat arrest, one piece of something to make me believe that you aren't just pulling the wool over our eyes to move our focus away from the real problem. And see, and that's why this is so important, because I think the responses that I got in the comment section for this particular post were like, hey, why don't you believe it? Why do you care? Like, is it really that unreasonable to believe that this happened? And I'm like, you know what? It's not really unreasonable to believe that this happened. But it is unreasonable to believe that it did happen and there's no evidence of it. You know what I'm saying? That if it happened in a comment section, that somebody didn't screenshot it and go, oh my gosh. That if it did happen, that there wasn't a single arrest or police report filed. That if it did happen, there wasn't at least something out there. And you know what? If it wasn't a false flag, and that's the thing with false flags is that usually there is no real evidence. It's all based on conjecture. It's all based on like, oh, this is reasonable that it could have happened. There's no evidence. There's no smoking pew-pew, if you will. It's just fake. And so with that being said, that's all I'm asking for. And there was a couple of people who made some valid arguments in the comment section. One of the comments was, hey, why do you feel entitled to having this proof? And my answer to that was simply this. It's not that I feel entitled. It's just that if you are going to use that excuse, then I'm entitled to not believe you. Do you know what I'm saying? If you're going to say like, oh, we don't have to show you proof of this, then I go, okay, well, then I don't have to believe you either. You know what I'm saying? You can't call me crazy for asking for evidence and then also call me crazy for not believing you at the same time. It's like, I don't know, some issue of double jeopardy or something. I don't know. There's some kind of fallacy there. So just show the evidence if it happened. But then somebody else also made a valid comment in the comment section where they said, well, when this happened in the past, the people that made the death threats, they were raided and they got doxxed and everything else. And to that, I simply said, okay, well, then just blur their name out. You know, like show me a police report showing that you filed and that this thing happened, and show me that you are willing to put the police report and willing to prosecute people. Because to me, that does two things. That does two really important things. One, it actually sends the right kind of message to the community. It sends a message of, hey, guys, you cannot do this and we will prosecute you when you do this. See, as far as strong messages go, that's the right type of strong message. That's the type of strong message I can get behind, because you shouldn't be doing this. And if you are, it's technically illegal. It is super illegal. You can't just send people death threats via email and stuff like that. You can and should get prosecuted if you do that. I don't care what it's about. Right? So show us that you actually care about people doing that stuff, and show us that you are willing to do what it takes to cleanse the community of this kind of negativity. Because that's really important. So that's the very first thing that it does. It sends the correct strong message, one that everybody can get behind. And then the second thing it does is it gives everybody else a peace of mind knowing that you aren't just pulling the wool over our eyes, that you're not just making this up. And, to what harm does that do? There's no negative of it. So maybe they just haven't done it. Maybe there's something that I don't know. I'm willing to admit that I don't know everything. Like, obviously, I don't know. It'd be impossible. I'm not God. But at the same time, maybe they just haven't thought about releasing it, because maybe they haven't thought that people might want to see it. And there's that too. But at the same time, maybe it's all BS. You know what I'm saying? And so with that being said, really, has anyone seen any kind of evidence that this really happened? Because at the end of the day, I can feel that the public is still very divided, but it almost feels like tell me in the comment section, leave me an algorithmic comment whether you agree with me or whether you disagree with me on this point. It feels like the public opinion, like the energy is starting to slowly die down, which in some respects is good for the greater community, but it's also bad because if we let them get away with this and they do nothing, then they're just going to keep doing this over and over and over again. And so there's definitely this feeling that it's starting to die down and that we're healing. But there's also this feeling that, maybe people are just tired. Maybe we're just getting lethargic, and that this all might start back up once some energy is reignited, once the right thing comes out or the right announcement comes out. Maybe this last message that they put out was their way of going, hey, we need to take a time out and regroup and figure out a better strategy, because if we put anything out right now, it could blow up in our faces, and they know this to be true. And all of this just makes me feel like there's so much more going on with this. There's so much more going on with this that we as a community deserve to know. Because again, even after all this blows over, right? We've even seen Guys, we've even seen some of the prices starting to slowly tick back up because a lot of people are buying the cards still. But even after all this blows over, there was still some definite harm done to this community that cannot simply be erased, and we should not allow them to get away with it. But, as I've heard it say many times, time heals all wounds. Mostly all wounds, because some wounds are never healed, right? But at least scars grow over. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to this, what are some options that we can go over going forward? So me personally, I think that since Wizards of the Coast has taken over the Commander format, one of my favorite posts that somebody put on there is they said, hey, they don't really have the authority to do that. They don't own the way we play the game. They just own the ability to print the cards. But once we get the cards in our hand, we can play with them however we want. If we wanted to play Kamigawa block Tiny Leaders, we could do that. We can play Kamigawa block Pauper Tiny Leaders if we wanted to. And there's nothing that they could do. Right? It's the same thing that happened with Commander. Like, the community decided that we wanted to support Commander and not Standard and everything else. And what happened to Standard? It's pretty much gone. And they did everything they could to bring attention to Standard. They even turned it into a video game called Arena. And it's awful. Nobody really, people play Arena, don't get me wrong, but it's not like it was before. People just play Commander. And so what I can see is a new format, a new way of playing, morphing out of this, in which the community takes back control. And then eventually Wizards will start the cycle of trying to fix it again and try to regain control of whatever format that is. In my mind, what I've been doing to that effect is I've created a website called unboundcommander.com. And unboundcommander.com is basically Commander as the original players intended it to be. Without this ridiculous, massive ban list, something that is community focused, and something that we can actually grow into a competitively viable format that we enjoy playing on a competitive level, but also that we can play not competitively and still have a lot of fun with competitive rule sets. The same way that Modern is, right? The same way that you play Modern, if you're playing casually with friends, you're still playing with Modern cards, with Modern power level, with Modern rule sets, with Modern ban lists, except you're just playing it for fun with your friends. You're not playing for prizes and stuff. And that people do that with Modern, people do that with Legacy, people do that with everything else. This whole idea that Commander should have always been a casual format is just beyond me. I don't think that we should have ever been balancing Commander for casual players. Because at the end of the day, people are going to play casually no matter what. But playing Commander at a level where you can do what you want and do the most hilariously fun things, like, I don't know, play Time Vault and take infinite turns, and then your community, your play group gets mad at you and says, never play that again. Well, that's how that should go. And then once we get actual competitive data sets going and we find where the real problem cards are, then we go and reevaluate those things and we start adding things to the ban list for competitive play. But you got to start from somewhere. And so if you head over to my website, unboundcommander.com, I say it's my website because technically I started it, but I don't want to have control over it. I would rather get people to start posting, to start talking about things, get some volunteers to step up and want to be moderators and things like that, and let's start rolling this thing up with a community effort and take back control of the format that we all know and love. And I think that even if what I'm doing is not successful with that, somebody else being successful with that is the best solution for the future. Because at the end of the day, here's a take that I haven't really thought of. But if we do that, let's just say that happens. then this ban list that Wizards puts out for their thing will make cards more accessible for that format. And then there's always this idea that since it's a community effort, we don't really care about proxies. If you're proxying cards, the community, generally speaking, supports the idea of proxying cards that are far too expensive or difficult to get a hold of because they're on the reserve list. Let's Mox field it out. Let's get this thing going. So let me know what you guys think. See if you have any evidence, please post it in the comment section. If you disagree with me or you think that I'm an idiot, go ahead and give me an algorithmic comment in the comment section. Help this get out to as many people as we can. But anyway, that's it. That's all I got for you guys tonight. Peace, love, and chicken grease.